Hi, and welcome to Release Your Grief and Thrive. I'm Dr. Michelle Pedicola. In this second segment of Module 2, you will discover how loss affects your relationships.
And I want to read to you a quote from a writer, Henry Nouwen. Found this on the website, and it's so apropos. It's about friends. It says, "The friend who can be silent with us in a moment of confusion or despair, who can stay with us in an hour of grief and bereavement, who can tolerate not knowing, not healing, not curing, that is a friend indeed." So this is the sort of person you want to attract to yourself, somebody who can hold space for you, can listen to you without trying to cure you. And it's a really natural response for humans to try and make other humans feel better. But when we're in grief, we need just space to allow our feelings. We don't want somebody to solve our problems. We just want to be present. Grief rewrites your address book. Some people in your life will be there for you. They'll call you up. They'll take you out to eat. They'll take you on a walk. They'll ask you how you're doing. And they'll listen. They'll be that friend. Others will drift away. And new people will show up. I have a friend, her name is Carolyn, and she lost her husband about 3 months ago. And this woman, Carolyn, she knows a lot about death. In fact, she's written a number of books. And yet, no matter how much writing she did, there is nothing that could have prepared her for the impact of losing her husband of over 40 years, maybe 50 years. I don't even know the date. Anyway, she had two really, really, really close friends that she invited to be with her, to support her. Well, these two friends showed up, stayed in her house. One was a man, one was a woman. They fell in love, and they went away. And they left Carolyn by herself. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes people are so terrified of the grief of other people that they run away. And so Carolyn now has to turn to other friends. So in this second module, we're going to talk about how to create the connections and the bonding that you need to support you through your grieving. Connection is a relationship between two or more individuals. It could be any kind of casual connection, work associates, for example, or customers if you're a business person, or casual friends, or people at the gym that you meet and know by name, or people in a church group that you know by name, or any club that you belong to. Bonding, in contrast, is a much deeper connection. A bond is really deep, is usually we refer to bonds between family members. Bonding is a process of forming strong attachments or close relationships with significant others. It doesn't have to just be family. It can also be, of course, partners, spouses, close friends, and even teachers or mentors, that you get such a close relationship and they're so important in your life that they actually help you to feel safe. And what happens on the physiological level is when you bond, oxytocin, a hormone called oxytocin, is released into your body. This is a really feel-good hormone. It makes you feel great. This is the hormone that activates when you are in love. It is delicious. It is the hormone that's activated when a mother births a child. It's essential. Going back to that biology of the human animal, it is essential for survival for the mother to be bonded with her child. Human children take so long to mature to a state or level of capacity where they can take care of themselves. So nature stepped in and made that bond really, really strong. And here's something that's interesting. Unlike most other animals, human beings tend to bond with each other in marital relationships or in partner relationships because of that need for that family unit to have both the provider and the nurturer to help that child to survive. So nature really stepped in and put a bunch of oxytocin in there to make sure that husbands and wives or partners stuck together, stayed together so that they would take care of the children. So oxytocin is released during physical contact like hugging or touching, and also through eye contact. This is good to remember because this is a way to get your dosage of oxytocin as you're struggling through your grief, is to open yourself up to hugging and touch or even just eye contact. So why is this important? Well, as I said in the last module, we're social animals. We're wired to connect with others. We're wired to live in community because that enables us to survive. So when we experience broken bonds, it reduces, while it's increasing the ACTH, which arouses fear, that fight, flight, freeze response, it's also reducing the oxytocin. And when oxytocin is decreased suddenly, it can actually bring about this sense of depression and despair. Here's another thing that's important about the bonding. When you have a loss, very often your loss is also the loss of others. And these others may very well be in your bonding community. It's sometimes a bit of a startlement when people realize that their loss is not their own. And they can come to this realization, say, in a memorial service, when they realize that the person that they're mourning, a lot of other people are mourning. For example, a loss of a family member can impact the whole family. So you lose a partner, a spouse, and your children have lost either a father or a mother. And your in-laws have lost a child, and it can expand outwards. But those are kind of like the most significant losses that can happen. And when you turn to your in-laws, or even your own parents, they may not be able to be there for you as much as you would like because they're also experiencing the impact of that loss. I had a client that was not married, but she was in a significant relationship with a partner, and he died suddenly while on a biking trek. He had a heart attack, and she had hoped that she could friend his sister, his only surviving family. She didn't have any family of her own, and so she reached out to the sister. But the sister couldn't handle it. She would not be friends with my client because it was too triggering for her. She didn't want to feel the effects of the grief, and so she pulled away. On the other hand, it can be an opportunity for bonding if, when you go into that connection with your in-laws, or that you recognize that they're grieving too, that they also need to have space to have their grief. So loss affects your other connections. When you lose a spouse, you may find that many of your couple friends no longer feel comfortable hanging out with you. Your loss may be too close for comfort. If you were never married, and you're in a significant relationship, you can lose a whole family community. I had a friend who was in a significant relationship with a partner for about 5 years, and she had gotten to know all of his adult children. But when he died, they abandoned her. They did not want her in their lives. So she not only lost her partner, but she lost the whole family constellation. I don't mean to be sounding so depressing. It doesn't always have to work this way, but just to be aware. And then when there's a loss of a child, this can break up a marriage if the grieving is different. And often that's the case, that one partner maybe is ready to move on and to let go of the grieving sooner than the other one. And there can be conflict over that unless there's some kind of intercession or help to enable those partners to see what is happening. And losing a friend can impact a whole friendship group. People may draw away or they may pull together. I want you to think for a moment how your loss affected your connections with others. How did it affect bonding with family and friends? And take a few moments to do that. And I'm going to play some music just for about a minute while you write down some notes about that. It's important to remember that no single person can replace the loss of a bond to a significant other. Now, it is possible that you may, if you lose a partner or a spouse, marry again. They will never completely replace that person that you knew before, but they can replace that relationship, but not right away. You need to do your full grieving before you do that. But you can never replace a child. In the good old days, people lived in community, in a much more tightly knit community than we do in modern times. And so the bond was spread among many, so that when you lost somebody, and of course losses happen more frequently, people lost children all the time, people lost their partners all the time, but there was a community, a group that was there to support members who had experienced a loss. And there were formal social behaviors to help ease the transition. People would show up with food, people would hang out and stay with the person, the griever. They would take them on walks. They would be there for them and make sure that they took care of themselves. In modern day, people tend to live in these nuclear families, if not totally alone. And so when they lose a close bond, they are put in a more desperate situation. Who do they turn to? And the tendency is to swamp friends and family with emotions because the need is so great. After my mother died back in 1998, I was fortunate in that I was able to go off to a spiritual retreat center for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I was able to tell my story over and over to others who had also experienced the loss of a parent. And this really enabled me to process and work through a lot of feelings. And also spared my husband, who had never lost a parent. And so I could have swamped him easily with my need to tell the story. So it's helpful to have other people to turn to.
That's our segment for today. You learned how your loss affects your relationships and why your relationships are essential to your healing. In the next segment, you will find the gaps in your social connections.